I'm Travis Weaver, and you're listening to the Good People Project.
Yes. Okay. All right. We're rolling. A lot of times our elected officials get a bad rap. Sometimes that's appropriate, but there are also a ton of genuinely good and decent people in elected office or running for elected office. The Good People Podcast highlights those who are doing good and selfless work for the American people. Today's guest is in the freshman family with me. We were both elected in 2022. He's an accomplished chiropractor, which I have to say is a great way to curry favor in the Capitol. He's adjusted my SI joint in his office last year, and I know he's helped and adjusted several other members in his short tenure. He's an incredibly hard worker, and I really admire his willingness to spend time with his opposition. More on that shortly. Without any further ado, the wise and talented Representative Kevin Schmidt. Kevin, how's life, man?
Very good. Very good.
Well, I want to start by saying you look great. I know a couple months ago you went on this diet routine and you've lost 15 pounds by now?
About 18, 19.
So what have you cut out and what's the journey been like?
Well, it's just been a natural diet, fruits, vegetables, and meat. And that's what I eat.
Well, you used to be a marathon runner.
I've done that.
Opportunity to get back there?
That wouldn't have been when I was like 20 years old. So nothing near those distances. I think just walking the dogs for around town and might start running a little bit.
Good. Well, let's start off with talking about the district that you represent, because when you won this race, you surprised a lot of people. It's a largely African-American district, which obviously you aren't. I think, for heaven's sake, you're a freaking Viking. But your opponent was, and she was also an incumbent. So I think a lot of naysayers wrote you off, but you came in and you won fairly handily, I think by almost 6 points. So what's going on here?
Well, so, the district was redrawn, and my opponent then and my new opponent, she's running again, she's far left. The district is now moderate. It's a moderate district. So I guess you would say in her defense, she just didn't fit the new district, and I am a moderate.
And one of the things I really appreciate about you is, I've got it easy, for heaven's sake. I've got a Republican plus 25% district. I do try to go meet people on the other side, but there's just not a ton of them around. Whereas for you, every day you're kind of going into enemy territory. You're going to meet people that traditionally wouldn't be a Kevin Schmidt supporter, but I think, you do a great job of really going and having those tough conversations and earning people's respect. So tell me a little bit about how you found that, and if you think it's uncomfortable or if you've really enjoyed making uncommon allies and friends.
Well, going back to being a chiropractor, I've dealt with a lot of people and a lot of different viewpoints, and because of that background, I think I'm adaptable and I can understand people where they're at. And I think a lot of times you have to put yourself into someone else's shoes and see, why they are the way they are, and then meet them halfway. So I wish a lot more politicians would think that way, instead of on both sides of the aisle, far right, far left, digging their, feet in the sand and just not budging.
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting is coming from medicine, being a doctor, especially a chiropractor, where you're diagnosing things without really knowing what the problem is. And I think that's really a strength that we need in the state of Illinois, because God knows we've got all sorts of problems, and sometimes we have to scratch our head and say what's going on here. But I'm sure you do need to use some of that diagnosis background that you have from your professional career, and how do you apply that into your political career?
Well, yeah. So a perfect example that if you're looking to span healthcare over, so as you know, our governor claims that the state is growing and we're not losing population, and what I like to say is, we use the same thermometer to test all of the state's temperatures, all around us in the whole Midwest. And then the governor decides, well, I'm going to use my own thermometer just in Illinois. And guess what? We're doing awesome. Yeah. So I think it's thinking objectively, the scientific approach, and looking at the big picture, And when you do that, you can kind of see through a lot of the smoke and mirrors. And I've been taught to think that way because of healthcare.
Yeah, it was interesting. Just recently, we had the budget get passed, which included some tax hikes in it. And our side of the aisle, you heard things that were very factual.
Mm-hmm.
People are leaving. Businesses are leaving. People are saying they can't afford it anymore. And then their side talks, and they say, Illinois is thriving. This is the best state in the nation, and businesses are moving here. And they might have anecdotal stories about that, but when you look at a state that's gone from over 13 million people to now just a shade over 12 million people, people are talking with their feet, and they're saying that it's not working for them. So I'm wondering, do you see that in your district where people will say, we're taking care of you, everything's fine, and maybe they kind of bought that story for a while, but now they're waking up and saying, the person who was here said she was helping me, and my life's not any better, so maybe let's try somebody new.
So a perfect example that just happened was I didn't vote yes on it, you didn't vote yes on it, but the taxing on the sports betting.
Yep.
So in East St. Louis, which is in my district, they have the Casino Queen. That's the number one employer. That's their tax base. And the mayor of East St. Louis put out a statement saying that the increase in the taxes on the sports betting is going to run that casino under. And, one of the factors that a lot of people don't see is, so East St. Louis sits on the Mississippi River. Well, right across the river, what about 600-700 yards, across the Mississippi River, you've got St. Louis. Well, their rates are all lower. So we're always competing. And if we up our taxes that much, that casino is going to go under. And the mayor said it best, they're balancing the budget on the backs of the people of East St. Louis. And now those are heavy Democrats.
Yeah.
But when it comes to actually having their back, Christopher Bell, my senator, voted yes for that. LaToya Greenwood is in favor of the budget. When it comes to, saving their people, they don't care. They just follow party lines. And unfortunately, it's been going on like that for a long time. I'm the first Republican there in 47 years.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate the hard work that you're doing. I got to believe that people are appreciating the inroads that you're making. Like I said, going and talking to people that probably never thought about voting for a Republican, but when you do the work and you come stand on their doorstep and you tell them why, they may not agree with you on everything, but I imagine they probably respect you for trying. And while you're talking to them, they might realize a thing or two that we probably have more in common than we do in differences these days.
Well, definitely when it comes to the people of East St. Louis, they're a very religious people. And the Democrat Party has strayed way away from anything Christian. And they are Christian. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of things that I can identify with the people of East St. Louis and Cokie. I'd say in the whole district for that matter.
Yeah. Before we get too far away, I do want to just talk a little bit about you being a chiropractor, because it must be nice to have a cool job. I mentioned earlier, I interviewed Amy Ellick a few times ago, and, she's a CPA. I work in finance. It's not really something that you go to dinner parties and you talk about it and people ask you about it and ask you to help them with things. So I'm curious, what's your specialty? And as a follow-up to that, is there a common piece of advice that you give to your patients that seems to kind of be a trick for maybe some different ailments that's just kind of motherhood and apple pie everybody could use to fix this?
So when I graduated from chiropractic school, I came out with my slogan for the practice, and it's Schmidt Chiropractic, where the patient takes responsibility for their own health. So what I preach to people is health is something that you have to work on. When you're young, you can get away with things, but as you get older, you need to have a healthy diet. You need to put time into it. It's not always fun. And, that same approach I take to politics and society, where people need to take responsibility for their actions, and good or bad, it goes both ways. So I believe in the individual and the individual taking responsibility. And I think if that ideology was a little more common in the United States of America, I think a lot of our problems would just disappear.
Yeah, gosh, that's so interesting. I mean, you're exactly right in medicine. Nobody's going to fix your problems for you. And nobody else is going to fix your diet. And as much as we wish there's not a magic pill that you can just take.
Well, there is the Ozempic that the governor is pushing
Till now.
but
it's not without a side effect.
I'm not going to get into that, but when you go off of that, I think things are going to go south quick.
Yeah. And I also think that was really highlighted to people during the COVID pandemic, because the message was, don't exercise, don't take vitamin C, D, and zinc, don't get fresh air, just wait and get the vaccine, and then that'll be your solution. I think a lot of people felt like, well, maybe there is common sense to the vaccine. I don't know, but I know that if I'm healthier when I get sick, I'm going to be better. So why are all these people telling me that I shouldn't take care of myself? And then the way that it split so partisanly was so interesting, because you're right. We're the party that says, we want to help you. I say that Republicans believe in a safety net. Democrats believe in a spider web. We want to help people back up. We want to give them the tools to get back on their feet. But so often for them, I think it's like, we like you on welfare. We like you coming to vote for us. We like it when you're on the take. And so for your health philosophy to be like, I'm going to help you get back on your feet, I think that's just a really interesting correlation to the political philosophy.
Yeah, it's people have more control of the things in their life than they think they do.
Also, I think one thing about you as a business operator, I know that you've taken some measures to cut cost, and I think really try to be efficient in the way that you do business. I'm sure that there's a lot that you could take over to the state of Illinois, but I'm just curious, how do you take not just your medical experience, but also your experience as a businessman?
So what I did was I eliminated a lot of cost. I don't have a secretary. I don't work with insurance. I do a straight $20 every visit, every time. I don't have to worry about collections then. And basically, I streamlined everything, and then I passed those savings because of streamlining onto the patients. And we could do the same thing with the taxpayers. Streamline everything, eliminate cost, and then lower taxes because we don't need as much money. But unfortunately, the Democrats, if they have extra money, they spend it and then some, and then take out bonds and more debt.
Yeah, and that's what's so frustrating is, we just passed a revenue bill that has $1 billion in new taxes, and cutting costs never even entered the equation.
No.
And, if you have a business or if you have your family budget, when the budget's not balancing, the first step most people do is, what can I cut? Have I been spending too much on groceries? Have we been going out to eat a lot? Have we been going on trips we can't afford? That should be step one, is where can we cut? And when you have a $53 billion budget, I just do not believe for 1 second that there's not $1 billion in cuts that we could have done before we did $1 billion in tax increases. But that's always their gut instinct. Let's go back to the taxpayer.
Yes. The taxpayer just funds everything. Mm-hmm. Whatever they want, they just take it.
One thing I want to play here, Kevin, is I thought you did a really nice job in your floor speech on when we did the budget a couple weeks ago. And I'm going to play this bite for you, and then I just kind of want your reaction of what you were thinking about when you said these words.
Here we are. We all have clean clothes on. I'd even call them fancy clothes. We had food today. We have homes. We have cars. We don't need pay raises. The people back home need that money. This is a disgrace. And I'm telling everyone in this chamber, including that side of the aisle, donate that pay raise back in the form of a charity back home, people that need it. No grants, no paperwork. You just give the money back right out of your account. That's action, okay? And vote no on this bill.
So I really appreciate it, Flint, because, gosh, I'm thinking about we're going to raise taxes and do pay raises. But I'm just curious, did it kind of come to you at the moment where you plan on saying that, or how did that thought come to your head?
Well, so I have already been donating my pay raise back from the last pay raise. Mm-hmm. So we call up local food banks, find out what they need, and then we deliver what they need. So it was something that I've already taken action on, and I thought that everyone else in the chamber should do the same, including the Democrats, because you don't deserve it. And the people back home, especially in my district, are hurting.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hadn't really thought about this, but it's so I just backwards think about, we're raising taxes on people. We're taking part of that to pay ourselves more. And it almost seems like the only way we should be able to pay ourselves more is if we're lowering taxes, right? Because that's how you earn something. Yeah, I know. I guess what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that your concept there of earning something, I don't think the Democrats are always on board with that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of what you would call entitlement.
Yeah.
So, and they take that personally with their own salaries.
Yeah, and it's also so odd that Illinois, I think, is the fourth highest legislative pay in the country, yet we're in last or next to last place in overall tax burden, unfunded pension liability, outward migration, unemployment rate. I mean, you name it, we're just about bottom of the barrel, yet we're paying ourselves a ton. And I just think that's so backwards that, and I think it's kind of connected in that if we weren't getting paid so much, it would be a lot more public service. People would be there for the right reasons. It's not for a career. But as far as you go, I think it's so great that you work outside of politics, because I think that kind of makes you untouchable in your seat. Obviously, you're going to work your ass off and make sure to come back, but it's because you want to come back, not because you need to vote a certain way to win so that you can keep getting a paycheck. Because I'm sure if you ever lost, you'd probably make more money anyway. So it's just clear that you're doing it for the public service.
Yeah, and on top of that, when you have another job, you have life experience, where we've got some state reps in there that really have no life experience.
Yeah.
And you want to bring that experience and wisdom to the House floor so that we pass balanced bills.
Yeah. I think that's the way the founders intended it. And we have some of that where people bring their own knowledge. Obviously, you being a chiropractor, Howard's a doctor, Tip Sword's chief deputy sheriff, Amy Ellick's a CPA, we got a bunch of farmers.
Yeah.
Where I do think that we have a lot of diversity in background and thought, but the more that people become lifelong politicians, you really lose that, because you're kind of crowding out the people that should be serving for public good, that can bring that experience with them. Another thing I want to talk to you about is how you get to know your district so well, because I think that's something that you've really prided yourself on. So I'm curious. I know you knock a lot of doors. Any interesting stories that you've had at doors? I mean, when you knock hundreds of them and thousands of them, obviously you're bound to meet some characters. So I'm curious if there's anything that sticks out to you that you remember of your door knocking times.
Yeah. So there's one incident. It was a really hot day. I was in Freeburg, and I'm, chugging along. I walk up the sidewalk, and there's a lot of houses that'll have, not a lot, but they'll have all the signs on there: no soliciting, no politicians, go away, basically. Mm-hmm. So I got about 15 feet from the door, and I, put my head up, and I saw all those signs. So I turned around, never knocked on the door, and walked down the driveway. I was walking to the next house. And this guy was a little jumpy that day, I think. So he saw me on his cameras, and he comes chasing after me. And I said to him, I said, look, I never knocked. Sorry.
Yeah.
And
so you're just kind of whistling through a minefield, just sweating ahead of the clouds, and you look up and you see no soliciting. So you wheel it around, and this guy's like, hey, did you see my sign?
Yeah. I was like, I saw him. Sorry. So, but we get to talking, and this guy was a lifelong Democrat, and talked a little bit about ideology and who I was and what I stood for. And by the end of that conversation, I had a new voter.
Yeah.
So, and now when I walk by his house, because I've walked that neighborhood since, he invites me up to say hello. So it, we can flip people, and I think it's just a matter of misinformation. They don't know who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, I mean, I had mailers against me. I mean, it's Travis Weaver. I'm sure Kevin Schmidt is a right-wing extremist.
Yes,
and it's
extremist, that's their word.
I don't know. I think all I think is that you should have a right to keep most of what you make, and that you should be able to send your kids to a decent school where they're not going to have left-wing ideology shoved down their throat, and that we should drive on decent roads, and that we should attract business because we're more competitive. I mean, I think that sounds
public safety.
That if somebody breaks the law, that they should be held accountable for it. We had this bill recently that changes the name from offenders to they're called justice impacted individuals.
Justice impacted individuals. Yeah, that made national news.
Yeah. I don't know that that's very common sense.
No.
So when you have a guy like this one that you met at the door, is it more that he realizes that you're not an extremist and you're just an everyday guy that wants to help people, or is it that he learns something that maybe flips his vote because of a policy issue? Is it that he learns about you, or is that he learns about your views?
I would say both. Once he found out I was the actual candidate,
yeah, you're doing the work.
I was doing the work.
Intern doing. You go out there,
and I think it's a lot in healthcare. You call it bedside manner.
Mm-hmm.
It's how you talk to people, and policy. So he was a big union guy.
Uh-huh.
And if you look at my voting record, you'll see that I'm also a big union guy. So, and that's really surprised him there.
Yeah.
But, that was some of it. But I think a lot of it is just the individual. And when you talk face to face with someone, you get a gut feeling about them. And obviously, once he encountered me face to face, which is one of the reasons why I go to door to door, he trusted me. That's the key. Is trust.
Yeah.
When people trust you, even if you don't agree with them 100% and they're not 100% on board with your platform, they're going to vote for you.
Yeah.
Because they trust you.
Yeah.
And in healthcare, I'm adjusting people's necks.
Yeah.
So
right.
There's a lot of trust there. And I know how to develop trust. And basically, you just have to be yourself and be honest.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Yeah, and I think there's so many voters like this guy who are old-fashioned, Clinton Democrats because they're union folks, and I'm not a huge union guy, although I do believe that you've certainly got a right to unionize in this country, and I think a lot of them, gosh, all they want is a chance to earn a higher wage and make more for their family, and as more of a business person, I think that there should be some give and take there, but I certainly respect where they're coming from. But even if maybe that one issue we're not lockstep on, we're pretty lockstep on, gosh, I want to protect the Second Amendment, and I want my kids to have a real opportunity, and I want my roads to get fixed. And so maybe on one, we're kind of medium level understanding, but on the other ones, we're a great level understanding. Whereas the Democrats, they might be closer on that one issue, but on everything else, they're totally off the reservation.
I think a lot of what you're getting at there is rural versus urban.
Mm-hmm.
And, the urban center of Chicago, that forever they've thought differently than us. And, we're down here in southern Illinois, central Illinois with you. And the way we think, the way we're brought up, our morals, ethics, they're different.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think people can identify with someone that has the same morals and ethics as them. And yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, I also think that you really do a great job of voting for your district, which it is kind of hard to do, I think, in a position where it is more of a toss-up district. For me, I'm pretty darn conservative. My district's pretty darn conservative. Whatever I want is pretty much in line with what they want. Whereas for you, I know that there's a lot of times where if you're already a hell yeah or a hell no, you're probably going to be that way. But I'm sure there's instances where you could kind of go either way, and that's a great opportunity to say, okay, what's the best thing for my district? What did they want? Because really, you're not voting for Kevin Schmidt. You're voting for the 108,000 people that you represent.
Yeah, and one of the topics that would be healthcare. So, my personal ideology is probably a little more definitely for the right, but the way I voted on healthcare is down the middle of the road.
Yeah.
And just my experience with treating people and hearing about their finances and just the suffering that they're going through, I have definitely crossed the aisle with healthcare.
Yeah. And I think that's such a good thing for the people that you represent to know about you, is that when Kevin Schmidt takes a vote, he's not voting for Kevin. He's voting for the 108,000 people that he represents. And when your opponent votes, and we've got a record of her before or after because you beat her, and she's coming for you again. But when she was in before, it's not so much what they want as much as it's what she wants, and really more of what the Democrat Party wants. So now we've got Chicagoland having basically a vote from East St. Louis, which is hundreds of miles away. What the heck do they know about these people? Whereas for you, I really believe that you vote for these people.
Yeah, and there's a lot more in common. We have a lot in common with people like people from East St. Louis.
Yeah.
They're very religious people. They're very Christian. And the Democrats are far left. I would definitely not describe them as Christian at this point. So there's a lot of common ground that we have. At the end of the day, every human being, all they want is they want safety.
Yep.
They want clean water to drink. Like I said, clean clothes, shelter.
Yep.
They want their children's lives to be better than theirs. And that's common ground. We all want that.
We all want that.
I represent my entire district.
Mm-hmm.
So and it's a moderate district, and I vote accordingly.
So let's say the year is, 2030. You've been in for 8 years at that point. You decide to step aside and let somebody else take over the reins. What would you like to look back on that time period and really be proud of that you were able to get done for the state, to get done for your people, and how you represented it?
I would go back to healthcare.
Yeah.
So, if you look at issues that people care about, that's a bipartisan, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, sometimes top. That's their number one issue. It's in the top 3. It's way up there. Healthcare is always a big deal, and bringing my healthcare knowledge to the table, that's the issue, is healthcare, health improvement.
And I know you got a couple of young boys.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure paving a way for them to have a prosperous future.
In Illinois.
In Illinois, that's right. Especially being so close to Missouri, really wanted to make this the place where they can come back to.
Yeah. I've got a business here, a small business, chiropractor, but my wife's family also has a business, and it would be great, if that's a prosperous business for them to take over, or at least one of my sons take over. So we're very grounded in this area. We're not leaving, and my family's been in Belleville for over 200 years. So we're not leaving, and I'm going to fight for what's right.
Yeah, I always say, as Illinoisans, we have 2 choices. Option number 1, change states like so many people do. Option number 2, dig in and decide that we're going to change this state. And I respect that you're choosing option number 2. I'm right there with you. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to coming back with you in the fall and in future years to come, because you're going to win this race.
Of course. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
I'm Travis Weaver, and you're listening to the Good People Project.